And it's interesting because, like you just said, part of this has to do with our genetics. And also, we're being fed, conventional wisdom on nutrition is feeding us the wrong information. And people that are obese or overweight in society tend to be stigmatized like they don't have a lot of willpower. They can't, control their appetite. But again, with these things, genetics and them being fed the wrong information, it's not necessarily their fault if people are fat.
It's not their fault at all. And that's one of the things that's so heartbreaking. I just read a book, What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat. It came out a week ago. And the author's name, and I hope I'm not getting this wrong, Aubrey Gordon. And it's a heartbreaking manifesto about dealing with obesity and the way society responds to obesity and the failure of diets to deal with obesity. And as I'm reading this, I'm looking for some understanding. So she talks about saying, she says, it's all a house of cards. Some people are just built fat, which I would agree with, although I would say some people are just born to be built fat. It's like I said, the predisposition begins with the genes and in the womb. But I don't see any understanding in this book of why, because you're not allowed to talk about hormones and obesity because that's perceived as an excuse. So she knows that the calorie thing doesn't work for her, that she could eat less and all it'll do is make her hungry. She'll lose a little weight and she'll be hungry all the time. But there's no discussion of what could have happened hormonally to cause this obesity. And meanwhile, she's talking about eating the right way. And the right way, she's been taught, is less fat. Stay away from the fat, stay away from the fat, stay away from the fat. And it was, again, my research as a journalist, and as a journalist, I had to become a historian and a historian of science. Then until the 1960s, the conventional wisdom is that carbohydrates are fat. That's what my mother's generation believed, and her mother's generation. So if you don't want to be fat, you need carbs. Okay? They went right to your hips. And you can find this as a line I quote in all my books, or possibly all of them. First line of a 1963 British Journal of Nutrition article written by two of the leading British dietitians. Every woman knows that carbohydrates are fat. Okay, and then between 1963 and 1985, the research community decides that dietary fat is a cause of heart disease, and carbohydrates go from being inherently fattening to heart-healthy diet foods. So by 1985, Jane Brody, who's the personal nutrition writer in the New York Times, most influential health journalist in America in the 1970s and 1980s, writes a best-selling diet book called The Good Food Book, in which she's saying, we used to tell people to avoid carbs because we believe they're fattening, but now everybody should eat carbs. Even pasta is a heart-healthy diet food. So carbs become healthy. They become what we should all eat. I remember this transition. I lived through it. Suddenly, it used to be you had pasta, like Thursday night was pasta night, the way Friday night was fish night, and Sunday was barbecue. Suddenly, it's like you're having pasta every night. Bagels went from being something, people of my ethnic persuasion ate on Sundays to something we had for lunch every day. Because carbohydrates, there was even a theory that carbohydrates couldn't make you fat because they didn't have fat in them. And so we all switched to this diet. And meanwhile, sugar itself, because the nutrition community is blaming everything on fat, sugar becomes benign. So it used to be sort of common sense that you need a lot of sugar if you wanted to be healthy, that you didn't drink a lot of Coca-Cola if you wanted to be lean and healthy. But now it's anything that's fat-free is perceived as a health food. So it's the same way today you can buy these products, like a bottle of water that will tell you it's gluten-free. Back then you could, anything was, I doubt they did this, but I wouldn't have been surprised if Coca-Cola had said fat-free on the label. So you get this sort of paradigm shift in how Americans eat. They're avoiding fat, they're eating carbs. Sugar is now a freebie. If it's Weight Watchers, it would be 0 points. And even the protein we're eating is low fat. And again, if you look at the biochemistry, protein is going to stimulate insulin, glucose can raise blood sugar, stimulate insulin secretion. So you basically could not have told Americans to eat a more fattening diet if you had tried. And simultaneously, we blew up like balloons. I mean, the obesity prevalence in this country has almost tripled, and may have tripled by now since 1980. And it completely coincides with this shift from the idea of carbs being fattening to carbs being heart healthy diet foods.